This is a 2014 Toyota Auris with a 1.8 litre 4-cylinder Atkinson cycle petrol engine, mated to a 1.3 kilowatt-hour nickel metal hydride battery. Today, this Toyota has turned 10 years old, and I want to see how much age has taken its effect on the toll of the efficiency of the hybrid drivetrain. I want to see how much age has affected battery degradation on this Toyota hybrid, and whether the hybrid is a good second-hand buy or whether its performance and MPG have deteriorated over time. This car belongs to my father-in-law, Colin, and he purchased this car 7 years ago when it was 3 years old. He's kept all the receipts, all the service history, all the MOT advisories, and in this video I'll analyse the costs and repairs, and as I regularly drive this, I'll give you my opinion on how it drives today. I've got the job of filling up the car and taking it for services and MOTs. I quite enjoy it really, but it also gives us the chance to record actual MPG figures. Toyota has pioneered the petrol hybrid technology since the mid-1990s, and even though it seemed diesel was the propulsion of the future, Toyota continues to develop and improve on the hybrid drives. The hybrid has regenerative braking, so every time you take your foot off the gas, the battery will recharge with the kinetic energy stored in the moving 1,470 kilograms of this car, and if you brake, the battery charges a little faster. Toyota call this self-charging hybrid, and this basically means that you don't plug it in. The battery is recharged every time you brake or you fully lift off the accelerator. The stored electric is used at low speeds and pulling away from standstill to reduce the need for the engine to be used, which therefore increases fuel consumption and further increases MPG. It also has stop-start integrated into its drivetrain. When this touring version of the Auris was new, it was introduced in 2013 and it costs £21,095 for the base Icon trim. Now the model that I'm test driving today is the Excel trim, which is the top trim level, and this costs £22,800. Now in today's money, that would be the equivalent of £31,000 roughly. Now compare this to the 2024 Corolla Touring XL today, which costs £36,000, and you can see that the Auris was very reasonably priced back in 2014. Although you could argue that you do get a lot more technology in today's 2024 Corolla. The engine itself has 100 brake horsepower, and combined with the battery it has 140 brake horsepower. And it's still used in the Prius and the CHR, and it was also used in the Lexus CT, which is now discontinued. This second generation estate is referred to as the E180. You would think that a car with two entirely different propulsions, electric and petrol, would double the amount of things that could go wrong. However, petrol hybrids are the most reliable type of drivetrains you can buy. In fact, out of the top 10 most reliable used cars in 2022, according to Which magazine, 5 of them had petrol hybrid engines made by Toyota and Lexus. When this car was launched, it came with a 5-year, 100,000 mile warranty, and the hybrid system came with an 8-year, 100,000 mile warranty. That's still better than some of the warranties you get given today on new German cars. Take the 2024 VW Golf for example. This comes with only a 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty. The Auris is quiet around town and at low speeds, but when you take it out the 30-mile limits, refinement kind of stops there. There's a faint rumbling speed when you leave the 30-mile-an-hour limits at light throttle, similar to the sound of an old car which needs a new wheel bearing. I don't know if you can hear this in the video, it's quite a low frequency sound. I don't know if my microphone picked this up. But it's completely normal because when I test drove the 2023 Corolla last year, it has a similar tone, but a little bit more refined. I think this generation of Auris suffers from a lack of sound deadening in the wheel wells, whereas new Corollas are a little bit more quiet. When you come to a hill, the refinement dives off a cliff, as the whine from the CVT gearbox becomes the prominent sound. If you keep the needle in the economy zone, the engine's relaxed, but as it moves more into the power zone, the engine note becomes coarse and harsh. However, once you settle down to a steady speed, and even at motorway speeds, the engine fades into the background thanks to its high gearing. So if you do need to use this car on the motorway, it is quite relaxed once you reach 70 mile an hour. The CVT gearboxes on newer Toyotas from about 2022 have the 5th generation hybrid drive, which is a lot quieter when in the power zone or at full throttle. pulling away slowly and you can hear a faint whistle from the battery, and it's quite addictive. You end up trying to pull away slow enough so that the engine doesn't cut in. You can tell when the engine's off due to the green EV icon on the dash, and even on this 10-year-old drivetrain the engine cuts in and out seamlessly. If you spend a lot of time in urban areas, the ride in this is relaxed and smooth. The steering's light and it makes parking, slow manoeuvring really easy. However, for my personal taste, the steering is a little bit too light all of the time, and you don't get much feedback from the front wheels. You're kind of disconnected from the road, which some people might like. One thing I find interesting about driving a hybrid is the fact that all the electrics, even the power steering, works when the engine's switched off. So this that's just with my finger, that. Whereas normally if you switch the engine off in a non-hybrid car, you wouldn't be able to turn the steering wheel. Thankfully, this engine produces very little torque, so although the steering doesn't give much feedback, you don't need to worry about torque steer. Out on the motorway, there's quite a bit of noise from the tyres. I think a lot of money went into the development of the hybrid unit back in 2014, but to make this an affordable car, corners had to be cut in terms of refinement. And this shows in the lack of sound deadening and also the hard plastics used in the interior of the car. It's a competent motorway car, but it's not a comfortable motorway mile muncher. I took it for a quick drive on some quiet country roads, and well, it's not a driver's car. It leans in fast corners and it feels like you're driving an old estate with a live rear axle. Perhaps if the anti-roll bar was stiffened, this would sort that out. But it does seem to hug the corners regardless of speed, and in the 2 years that I've been driving this car, I've never heard the tyres complain going round a roundabout too fast or anything like that, and it's never understeered. There's 3 driving modes: economy, normal and power. However, after driving this car for a few years in all 3 modes, I end up leaving it in normal. Economy doesn't make the engine any more economical. All it does is reduce the sensitivity of the accelerator to discourage you from pulling away quickly. And power doesn't actually unlock any more power, it only increases the sensitivity of the accelerator. All 3 modes make no difference to the 0 to 60 figures. It's basically a placebo of the mode selector, which Toyota still includes in its new cars today. Whatever mode you choose, wherever you are and whatever speed you're doing, you can always access maximum acceleration by simply pressing the accelerator to the floor. So you can't be caught out in the wrong gear or left waiting on a turbo to spool out on this if you need power immediately. Although this car lacks the torque of a diesel it made in high speeds, the acceleration at low speeds is quite incredible for the amount of brake horsepower that is quoted, and that's because the electric motor spins up and has maximum torque from 0 revs, which means acceleration from standstill to about 40 miles an hour is quite quick. It gives you a lot of confidence at busy roundabouts and junctions, and because of the way the hybrid power delivers the power to the front wheels, there's rarely any wheel spin, even in the wet, which again increases confidence when you need to get away quickly onto a busy road. And another thing, you can't stall this. The stop-start never gets caught out because of the integrated hybrid drivetrain. Most drivers will find this 135 brake horsepower adequate. I managed a 0 to 60 in 10 seconds, and for a car that you can achieve well over 50 mpg, this is quite good. And you don't have to be a professional driver to achieve this 0 to 60 figure. But if you look at my previous video, I compare 135 brake horsepower hybrid to 135 brake horsepower diesel. And not only was the diesel faster in the 0 to 60 and 30 to 70 acceleration times, but the MPG in the diesel was superior on the motorways and around town. My economy for today's testing is 49 mpg, which I think is respectable considering all the acceleration tests I've repeatedly performed to see how the engine responds in different circumstances. During the hybrid versus diesel video I uploaded earlier in the year, I was able to achieve 47.2 mpg in the city and 54 mpg on the motorway. Very respectable and a great alternative to a diesel engine, especially if you have lots of short journeys to make. And you won't get any EGR or DPF issues that might come up with using a 10-year-old diesel for the same short journeys. Because this car's an Atkinson cycle petrol engine, as opposed to the more conventional Otto cycle engine, means that the thermal efficiency is around 40%, a lot higher than a normal petrol engine. So although MPG isn't quite as good as a similarly powered diesel engine, you still get better economy than a normal petrol. Also, once up to cruising speed, the CVT gearbox settles down to really high top gear, which also contributes to the good MPG. I think Toyota should have included a slightly bigger battery to store more of that kinetic energy that would normally be lost when you're braking and decelerating. I found that the EV mode was often unavailable in conditions where I would have expected it to be available. Even on a warm day with the battery indicator levels showing more than enough battery available, it makes the EV button redundant. In my opinion, the best economy is found by leaving the hybrid in normal and let it do its own thing, and it'll go in and out of EV mode whenever it deems best. As a protection for the battery, you never actually fully charge the battery. It never gets to a full 8 bars, and as soon as the batteries go down to 3 bars, the engine cuts in to recharge it. The colour of this particular car is Tyrol Silver, and it still looks kind of futuristic for its age. The main thing that dates the car, I think, is the smaller alloy wheels, and with every generation of car you seem to get a slightly larger alloy wheel, and Toyotas are no exception. But I think overall the styling has aged well, and in a state form it looks quite good in real life. Also, the angles are not just there for looks. The car was created to be aerodynamic. In fact, the coefficient drag is only 0.28 on this car. This is actually better than the 0.31 figure of the new Corolla Touring. And you notice this when inside the cockpit, as the angle of the windscreen means there's quite a large space between the steering wheel and the windscreen. The front seat's positioned where I would have it as the driver, and you can see here the rear seat space is good. You've got plenty headroom, plenty knee room, and for those who have to sit in the middle, there's no transmission or exhaust tunnel. The floor is completely flat. Although there is plenty of leg room for adults in the back, it's not actually wide enough for 3 adults to sit comfortably for any length of time. The best part about the interior, I think, is the panoramic roof. Even on a grey, rainy day, it's a really nice place to be. And in the night time you can look up at the stars on a clear night, if you're a passenger. The seats are part leather, part cloth, and are comfortable and fairly supportive. Although this is not a car you would choose for a long haul without your buttocks noticing. The seats also take some time to make adjustments which are found fiddly. The seats aren't electric, which is a shame on this top level Excel trim. If you're looking to buy a second-hand Auris, try and find a high trim level, as lower trim levels don't come with a lot of extras. But don't pay over the odds, as each trim level is relatively sparse in terms of standard equipment anyway. The steering wheel feels plasticky. However, it's not littered with a lot of buttons that a lot of newer Toyotas come with, and the steering includes height adjustment along with rake adjustment. The rest of the interior is filled with hard plastic, and although it's not comfortable or aesthetically pleasing, it reminds us of the solid plastic interiors that the Toyota Hilux has. They're really built to last, and the only rattle in this interior comes from behind the rear view mirror, something I've yet to investigate. There's lots of practical cubby holes in here, cup holders, bottle holders, phone holders, for front and rear passengers, making this quite a good family car. The turning circle on this is okay for a front wheel drive. You may have to make more than one pass when manoeuvring into tight car parking spaces at the supermarket, but the standard parking beepers and reverse camera are a bonus, especially for this year of car. You might notice during the manoeuvring on newer cars a faint ghostly sound. This is Toyota's AVAS, Acoustic Vehicle Approach System, and it creates a faint sonar sound at low speeds to let pedestrians know that the vehicle's there. However, on these earlier hybrids there is no AVAS, so if you return home late at night, you can sneak up outside your house in silence. This would make a great car for a burglar. The gear stick is small and stubby and is similar to the one used in the Prius. Some might like its light use, but I find it emasculating somehow. You can't call it a gear stick, it's more of a selector. But once it's in drive and you're on the move, you won't need to touch it anymore, and moving between drive and reverse is a doddle. You don't need to look down at all to see which mode you're in. One good thing about the selector is if you need a bit of extra engine braking assistance on long hills, perhaps following a slower car, you can pull the selector back and it puts the gearbox into B, which stands for brake, and this simulates a very low gear like on a traditional automatic gearbox, and it actually recharges the battery a little bit quicker. Although, according to Toyota, continuous driving when there are no hills in this mode is not recommended. The handbrake is an old school type, something a lot of people miss on newer cars that have e-brakes. but you never really need to use it because this car comes with hill hold. What I like about this is it's now holding me on the hill. I haven't got my foot on the brake, the accelerator, the handbrake's not on, and it's just holding me there steady. And then I press the accelerator and then just on my way. You only engage the handbrake when you're parking up. The touchscreen infotainment screen is small, but it's age appropriate for this year. It doesn't look too small. This was one of the first Toyotas to have a touchscreen. Even up until 2020, the top of the range Lexus GS, which sold in the United States for 100 grand, didn't have a touchscreen. You had to rely on a mouse pad system and side buttons. But on this it has its own version of sat-nav. It also has digital radio, it has Bluetooth for music in your phone. I do find the infotainment useful for knowing what's happening with the vehicle hybrid system. It's a nice clear display. Obviously it's a first generation touchscreen, so you do have to be patient and give it a second or two after you've made a selection within the menu. But I think it works really well. Although this was produced before Toyota Safety Sense, which is standard in all new Toyotas now, you do get an early version of road sign assist, which is useful if you're not familiar with the area you're driving in. Although because it is an early version, it does sometimes get confused if you're travelling between different speed limits. And there's a posh woman that comes over the speakers and tells you that you're going over the speed limit when you're not.
You are over the speed limit.
You do get a cruise control system with an old school stalk to engage and disengage. And I find this a lot more useful than more modern cruise control buttons which are integrated into the steering wheel. And the cruise control is a great way to further improve your MPG. It does have VSC, Vehicle Stability Control, but because it's got a modest amount of torque, I've never seen the traction control light flickering to cut the power to the front wheels or break any slipping wheels. This Excel trim has standard rear privacy glass, front and rear parking sensors, LED side lights, keyless entry, which incidentally wasn't fitted to the 2023 Lexus US 250 that I drove recently. This has auto wipers, auto headlights, dual zone climate control, heated door mirrors, park assist, heated front seats. A point about the front heated seats, they heat up really fast. I've never needed to use the high level of heat, even in snowy weather, because on low it becomes hot even after only a minute. It's great fun to switch it on the passenger seat when the passenger isn't looking, just to see them cook. This is one button that we haven't had to use yet. Because this is a petrol hybrid, the engine gets the temperature really quickly in winter, and this makes it a great winter car. One of the main gripes with living with the Auris is the headlights. They are auto headlights, but when you're driving in the dark, you still end up checking to see that you've actually turned them on because they aren't very good. Even on this Excel top trim, the old style halogen lights, as opposed to more modern xenon or bi-xenon lights, which aren't a new invention, and I think should have been included at this top trim level. They come standard on my 2009 Lexus IS, and they make such a difference. The air vents are robust, but fiddly to use and adjust. You don't get many luxuries in the back of the car. There's no air vents, no USBs, although you do get cup holders in the armrest and a bottle holder in the door pockets. Another thing I like about the Auris is the display. It's not a modern digital display, but it's clear and accurate. And the display includes an economy gauge, which is really useful, and it's a good size. And this means you can specify how much throttle you use when accelerating if you want to keep it in the economy zone, and therefore increase MPG. Also, because the size of the gauge, you can also specify how rapidly you charge the battery. So I mentioned earlier, if you take your foot off the gas, the battery will recuperate some of that energy that would normally be lost in engine braking. Then if you push your brake pedal, you can regulate how much braking energy you regenerate. However, it can only regenerate so much of the braking energy. So if you are in an economy run, you can brake way in advance to make sure that the gauge is in the blue charge zone on the gauge. There is a small economy gauge in the centre of the display, but it's fairly useless because it's slow to react and it lags way behind the actual throttle position. It's a shame that they didn't include a temperature gauge, which may not sound like a big deal, but on newer Toyota hybrids there is a temperature gauge. I don't like to rev a cold engine. I like to keep the revs low and the throttle position light while the engine temperature increases from cold. It's a small touch most buyers won't concern themselves, but if you want to keep this car and keep it for a long time, it's good to have as many gauges as possible so you know what's going on with the engine. However, as with this example, not having a temperature gauge hasn't been detrimental to the long-term health of the engine. The boot space is vast, being 530 litres, and this is useful to know if you're thinking of buying an Auris to use as a taxi, or you just simply want to make trips to IKEA. Also, loading heavy things into the boot is easy thanks to how easily the rear seats collapse, and the fact that there is no boot lip, like in a normal hatchback. This makes it such a practical car. Let's talk about reliability. I put this car through its recent MOT back in April and it sailed through.
Hi, I'm Adam. I'm carrying out your service today, your VHC and your MOT. Carried out your service for your vehicle safety report. Car's in good working order, nothing to report.
You might think that Toyota would be keen to find issues at the MOT stage to encourage buying a new Corolla, but they couldn't find anything wrong with this one. For an MOT and a minor service, a bacterial cleanse and insurance for the courtesy car, the bill came to 330 quid. I was slightly bemused when I asked for a health check on the battery for degradation. Toyota rang us back and asked what battery degradation was, and they didn't have a test to check what percentage of the cells within the battery was still in working condition. They did give us a health check certificate with a year's warranty on the battery though, as they were confident that the hybrid drive was working as it should. So what's gone wrong with this car in the last 10 years? Well, I've got all the service MOT certificates going back to 2014. So here if we go through, a new ancillary battery for £119. Front discs and pads, £300. It nearly failed in one of its MOTs because of a windscreen wiper. So here it is. So that was £23.63. And that's it. The rest is just service history and health checks done by Toyota. During the winter months, the tyre pressure sensors flag up a light on the dashboard, even though the tyre pressures are good. I think the tyre pressure sensors have been known to flag up false drops in pressure during winter for a number of manufacturers, so it's not unique to Toyota's this. There was a recall for the ECU in 2021. There was nothing wrong with it, but Toyota updated the software. However, Toyota didn't do a recall for the Auris's biggest problem. Now the Auris has an issue with the battery. Not the hybrid battery which sits under the rear wheels and assists the drivetrain, but the normal 12 volt ancillary battery. Just like other Aurises, this Auris, if not used for a few days, it won't start. And because the 12 volt battery is in the boot, it's challenging to jump start because the car has a smart key and it only unlocks the boot if you've got sufficient power in the 12 volt battery. Once you've managed to manually unlock the car and pop the bonnet, there are leads located under the bonnet which you can attach jump leads to. Although the 1.3 kilowatt hour main battery that powers the hybrid never goes flat, you still need the small ancillary 12 volt battery to activate the start button on the dashboard in order to start the hybrid drive. These problems started to surface in 2014 when owners who hadn't used the car for a few days found they couldn't start the Aurises. Back in 2014, Toyota were working on a fix for the battery issues, but the fix didn't work and Toyota never solved the problem, meaning that 10 years on, owners are still left with a Toyota that won't start if left unattended for more than a few days. Out of interest, Prius owners with the same engine and drivetrain didn't have the same problem. They were fitted with a larger 12 volt ancillary battery. Toyota's answer to owners was to leave the car in the ready mode every few days to enable the engine to run and recharge the batteries. Now if you use your car daily, this isn't an issue anyway. But if you leave your car at an airport car park, or if you're under lockdown restrictions, you're going to have to call the AA out to get started. Not an ideal situation. After all, if you buy a Toyota, you expect it to start. The other issue is an ecological one. The whole point in a hybrid is to use less fuel. But if you then have to drive the car or put it in ready mode every few days just to recharge the ancillary battery, that surely defeats the purpose. On a car that's designed to save fuel, why should the owner have to drive it every few days just to recharge the battery? That to me defeats the purpose of the fuel saving benefits of a hybrid car. Apart from this ancillary battery issue, the Auris is reliable. It's never broken down in the 7 years that it's been in the family, and it's never gone into limp home mode. Should you buy a used Auris? I feel like I've given quite a tough review of this 2014 Auris, and you may think that I wouldn't recommend you buying a used version like this. However, I've tried to review this used Auris as if I was reviewing a new 2024 Toyota to be consistent with my other car reviews. This car can be summed up in 3 words: reliable, practical, efficient. I would certainly recommend buying a used example like this one with full service history. If it's a low mileage version, you can be confident that the hybrid drive works efficiently and battery degradation won't be an issue. Just looking on Auto Trader, you can pick up a high miler with around 200,000 miles for around 4 to 5 grand. They're the cheapest. Or if you want a low mileage one, like this with around 15 to 20,000 mile, you can pay anywhere between 10 and 15 grand. This particular version was purchased in 2017 for £13,500 second hand. 7 years on, it's still worth at least 10 grand. So yes, they are expensive on the second hand car market compared to buying a similar, more popular yeared Astra Estate or Focus Estate, but this car will hold its value when you come to sell it on in the future. I hope you found this video useful. If you have an Auris, please let us know your experience in owning one in the comments below.